Good morning, dear educators all over the Philippines and those watching us from the other countries. Welcome to the third day of the 2020 CEAP Congress. Yesterday, we opened the Congress with messages of hope and inspiration to our educators. And we also witnessed the conferment of the Pro Deo et Patria Award. The next 2 days will be learning sessions using the domains of the Philippine Catholic School Standards as the framework. This morning, our first session will be on the domain of Catholic identity and mission, with a talk on educating to fraternal humanism. This afternoon, we will have the sessions on learning environment and learner development. We just want to remind you of what the Vice President informed us yesterday in her overview of the CEAP Congress. You only need to attend one session for each day for days 3, that is today, and day 4, that is tomorrow, and submit an evaluation for one session for each day and the general evaluation at the end of the conference to get the certificate for the whole Congress. However, all videos of the different sessions will be saved in the videos section of our official Facebook page and in our YouTube CAP channel for you to view and review anytime. So if you miss out a session, you can always get the video from our YouTube and our Facebook Live. As we begin, we encourage you to post your questions and comments at the comment section of this Facebook page or the chat box in YouTube channel, and we will ask these questions and read the comments during the question and answer portion. All right. Our session for today, Educating to Fraternal Humanism, is based on the document from the Congregation for Catholic Education released in 2017. One of the points of the document describes the kind of education, pandemic or no pandemic, that is sound and open, that pulls down the walls of exclusivity, promoting the richness and diversity of individual talents, and extending the classroom to embrace every corner of social experience in which education can generate solidarity, sharing, and communion. This is very much in keeping with our theme for this Congress. And to guide us in the discussion this morning is someone who is back by popular demand. Ayan, you asked for her. She's one of the more popular speakers in our webinars the past months that we gave you. And you requested in your evaluation sheets a part two of her talk. And so she's back. In fact, she's one of the writers of the recently published book, Religious Education in Asia. That's how far she goes, no? Published by the Routledge Publishing, an international publishing company. She is family to CEAP. She's a very active collaborator in the CEAP as a member of many committees. The Technical Working Group for the Philippine Catholic School Standards for Higher Education, the National Christian Formation Commission, the National Higher Education Commission, and just yesterday, she was appointed as the CEAP Research Coordinator. Please help me in welcoming with a virtual round of applause the indefatigable and beautiful Dean of the UST College of Education, Dr. Pilar I. Romero. Take it away, Doc Pilar.
Thank you very much, Mayan, for that rousing introduction. You know, natatakot ako. The director might be watching and he might be asking, ano na ginagawa nito sa UST? Puro CEAP, no? But, this is the part of my life where I really enjoy. Of course, I enjoy UST very much. It's my life. But also, CEAP has given me this new lease on life, on dynamism that I cannot find elsewhere. That's why I love CEAP so much. O, di ba? Mutual na yung ating admiration. Anyway, okay. So, I'm assigned a very, what would I say, very difficult, but at the same time, a topic which really resonates to all of us, to my heart, especially the fact that I've been with Catholic education for nearly 40 years. I started 1981. Can you just imagine? 1981, 2021, that's a good 40 years of my life spent in Catholic education, most specifically with the Dominicans. That's how Dominican I am. From high school up to perhaps up to getting to fraternal humanism. It's something, as I said, that will really resonate with all of us, especially all of us who are in the field of Catholic education. Okay, so you've given a little introduction about the document na yan, no? And really, I appreciate that. Okay, when it was launched, there were also some backgrounder on the document. What is the document all about? As you said, the document was published in 2017, to be exact, in April. And I'm really fascinated by this, as I am fascinated by young people. Young people really fascinate me. Siguro that's the reason why I stay in education for a very long time. Why am I fascinated by them? Ang dami nilang hanash. Diba? Yung mga tinatawag natin, mga hanash nitong mga young people. Ano ito yung mga hanash nila? Young people ang nagpauso ng mga anniversaries. Hindi lang anniversary. One of my students said, Ma'am, week-sari namin ngayon. Week-sari! No? Maliban pa yun sa month-sari. No? Therefore, I was asking my children, meron din bang quarter-sari? No? Kasi may week-sari, may month-sari, baka may quarter-sari. And we make a fuss over anniversaries. The church also makes a fuss over anniversaries. And why do I say that? Because this document was launched during the 50th anniversary of Populorum Progressio. Okay, so it was celebrated by the launch, by the release of this document, which was held in Vatican to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Populorum Progressio. No? And it was launched jointly, no, or published jointly by the Congregation for Catholic Education and the Pontifical Foundation Gravissimum Educationis. This was a foundation established, no, by Pope Francis. Okay, so it was launched. No? It serves as a guidelines. Okay, it presents rather guidelines. Guidelines to whom? Guidelines to more than 6 million students in 215,000 Catholic schools and 1,760 Catholic universities. Yung slide ko, excuse me, yung slide, may we go to the, okay, may we go to the first slide, please. Okay, so 1,760 Catholic universities and 215,000 Catholic schools all over the Philippines. No? So this is a guideline for the students and also for all those involved in Catholic education. Okay? What is the goal? Ang dami ng documents about Catholic schools, Catholic universities, and Catholic education. But what is the goal? According to the Secretary of the Congregation, okay? So it wants to emphasize that there is a generational or an educational pact between generations, okay? Starting from the family, emanating to the entire society. So it parang we can say that the document produces some kind of a ripple effect that extends to the entire social body. Okay? So next slide, please. So the guidelines, specifically, okay, the guidelines will be helpful for those who face the daily challenge of renewing with passion, no, the entire educational mission. Those of us and many of us, lahat kayo mga ka-online ko, no, at mga ka-online internationally, no, all of us, okay, are involved in this educational mission. And you know that we are not always okay. There is always that need to renew this passion. And these guidelines will help us renew our passion for Catholic education in whatever context we are in and in whatever continent of the world we are in. Okay? Also, the document also looks into, in the field of education, there is always a need for dialogue. But it's not just ordinary dialogue. It's what the document says as, or Cardinal Versaldi would say, constructive dialogue. So the schools, the universities, those of us in schools and universities would constantly engage in constructive dialogue, both within our own societies, locally, civic society, and the other stakeholders in our society, and even with international organizations. And this document will be helpful as we try to go about having that particular constructive dialogue. And as I would say, no, in the words of Pope Francis, whenever there is constructive dialogue, a true, meaningful constructive dialogue, what happens next is a meaningful and fruitful encounter. So even if the Cardinal is not saying it, I would say that this particular document is not only for dialogue, it is also for a meaningful encounter. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so how does the document begin? So basically, I'm going to look into the document, okay? Guide you in the process of looking into the document, but at the same time, I'm going to put in several sources also. So I'm looking at the document, but I'm looking at it also from the lens of people involved in Catholic education and religious education. In that way, we enrich our discussion, okay? So the document opens just like any other document that we have, whether in the local church, in the church in the Philippines, or the universal church. It opens by looking into the current scenario where we are all in. the situation of the world at present. And if you are going to look at the way it paints current scenarios, okay, it starts with the word crisis. Okay, so according to the document, our contemporary world, the world we live into now, is towards multifaceted and ever changing. There is that dynamic ebb and flow of change. And all of us are caught up in these changes. And these changes, we say, no, are both, no, good, and at the same time would also lead us to something which may be heartbreaking, okay, or which may be tragic. Okay, so ever changing.
I will give you one like that. So, papuri niya sa Japan, bibigyan.
The conferment of the Pro Deo et Patria Award, the highest award given by the Catholic Education.
Relationships that make up a living community. So this is very important. I would emphasize that education too, educating to fraternal humanism is always involves relationships and communities. Okay, and this community is something that is vibrant, living. Therefore, what happens is there is interdependence, okay, and we are awakened, okay, or reawakened to the realization that we are bound towards a common destiny. It may be a common educational destiny, or more profound than that, a common transcendent destiny. Okay, so therefore, according to Moore, okay, and Moore, no, the person in humanizing education, we look at the person not simply as an individual. No, that's why we veer away from saying, oh, the individual, the individual. No, because we say person, because as the name connotes, person comes from the word sonare, to sound out, to talk, to communicate, and we communicate within the context of a community. So we veer away in humanizing education, we look at this person at the center of the educational work engagement. But at the same time, this person is framed within a network of relationships that make up a living community. Very beautiful. No? And when this happens, we do realize that we are bound to a common destiny, a transcendent destiny. And the transcendent goal or transcendent destiny is also the word of Ex-Corde Ecclesiae. Okay, next. Okay, gising pa mga ka-online. Okay. So, humanizing education. Okay. As I said, I'm gonna enrich this. Of course, the document itself is very profound, very rich, but I am enriching it also with views coming from different people, and this time with the view of Benedict. As early as 2007, Pope Emeritus Benedict already said, in order to humanize education, although he may not be using the exact term humanize education, no? But I would say that humanizing education, according to Benedict, would mean promoting a true integral human development that is open to the transcendent, okay? Or through an opening on transcendence. We do realize that integral development cannot transpire or cannot happen unless there is that openness on the transcendent. Okay? Okay. For Pope Francis, he said this during the launching of the Global Pact on Education, unfortunately, which did not push through, but his words still ring true and loud when he said that educating to fraternal humanism or humanizing education calls for forming mature people. And what is the litmus test for maturity? We have formed them, our learners and our community as mature people when they are now capable of overcoming fragmentation. Again, the idea of community there, no? Fragmentation and opposition, and rebuilding the fabric of relationships for a more fraternal relationships for a more fraternal humanity. So I guess now you could already see that in humanizing education, there is this very harmonious interweaving, okay, of the person and the community. Okay, fabric of relationships that make up a fraternal humanity. That's according to Pope Francis during the launching of the Global Pact on Education. And then, as early as when the document Educating Today and Tomorrow, a Renewing Passion, it also talks about humanizing education. Okay, so according to this, and this is very beautiful, and this will resonate to all of us. According to this document, humanizing education is more than content assimilation. Okay. And you know, I'm a teacher and I know this, sometimes we are so fixated with content assimilation. Kailangan malaman nila ito, kailangan malaman nila ito. Well, content is important, but there are also other important, in fact, I would say it may not only be equally important, but more important. No? So humanizing education is more than content assimilation. It is providing learners with an opportunity for what? Self-education. I believe this online engagement, no, would really promote that self-education if we do hutagogy. No? Self-education, commitment towards self-improvement, and again, the ubiquitous community, self-improvement, and the common goal. And if we are able to do this, not only content assimilation, but the self-education and commitment to common goal, what happens is that the person becomes more caring towards creation, more open towards others, and more open to the Creator's immensity. Okay, so here we could say that to humanize education is to make the person, help the person become open to all this, to be more caring and open to possibilities of relating with others, with creation, and with the Creator. That's Educating Today and Tomorrow, a Renewing Passion. Okay, so another one, how do we humanize education? What is humanizing education? It means realizing that there is this intergenerational nature of education. What do we mean by that? Intergenerational nature of education or intergenerational education. It means that according to the document, modernize the educational pact within generations. The first there, when it comes to pact between generations, educational pact between generations, is realizing the importance of the family. In Catholic education, we cannot gloat or we cannot simply ignore the fact that the family or good family education serves as a backbone of humanism. The learners that we have now first learn how it is to be humane, human at home, in the family. Okay. Okay, so there is that need for educational institutions. Okay, if we want to place the person there at the center of our mission, is to respect the family as the first natural society and to recognize that the family is our partner so that okay, we could forge some kind of a solidarity with the family in educating this person to fraternal humanism. Okay? That's not only the question when it comes to the educational pact between generations. It's important no, to recognize the family. Okay? But also it is recognized to recognize traditions. Okay. It means, Mooney, according to Mooney, it means preserving traditions that represent millennia of wisdom. Okay, what we get from traditions, the wisdom that we have now, is not something that was what was whipped out of thin air. It is a product of a millennia of traditions that represent millennia of wisdom about who we are as human beings. We come to know who we are as human beings not at this present moment out of a snapshot, no? It's a product of traditions, ongoing and unfolding. So there is why is this important? If we do not recognize this, no, the wisdom of the past that comes to us, okay, through tradition, okay, it unfolds a notion of a transcendent reality that there is this hand, okay, that makes history unfold up until today. If we do not recognize this, then it says, no, according to the author, education becomes merely a tool for intervention in the here and now. If that happens, it becomes a very dangerous tool. If we are not cognizant of the fact that the wisdom we have now is born out of generations of men and women bringing to the present this wisdom, education will fall prey to that very dangerous, um, you know, work of being a tool that can easily be manipulated for some nefarious purposes. Okay, so part of humanizing education is being cognizant of the past. Okay. Later on, I'm gonna talk about that because also Pope Emeritus Benedict has something beautiful to say about that. Okay. A humanized education offers not simply services, but a humanizing education means providing places for meeting and discussion in creating valid educational projects. Or humanizing ito, may answer this very beautifully kanina, no? Yung about walls and all that. So a humanized education provides the needed impetus. It pushes, no? It puts us into a trajectory. Okay, impetus in pulling down the walls of exclusivity. Okay, or I would say, I would add to that the walls of elitism, okay, that we have been accused of as in Catholic education, the walls of exclusivity. And once we have pulled this down, we promote the richness and diversity of individual talents. Just a sharing. I just would like to contextualize this. Okay, for a fact. Well, I don't know if you know. Okay. Anyway, I'm informing you that in UST we are at this moment in this time of crisis will not be having the austere. Okay, the traditional step. Instead, we are going to have a different metric for our applicants. Okay, and one of the community there was adamant in saying, no, we have to look at the school. No, what kind of school is that? Because no, so in some schools, no, their 90 is equivalent only to our 80. I want to speak out because this is marks of exclusivity. Okay, there are always gems in the rough. I would say that there are always okay. I'm back. Okay, sorry for that. Siguro sabi ng UST, masyado mong maraming sinasabi sa UST. Anyway, so as I was saying, we cannot be missing out on what we call the gems on the raft. No, there are always people, real talents out there that we may be missing out if we are too strict on being exclusive. Okay, so the richness and diversity of individual talents. Okay, and we could extend the classroom to embrace every corner of social experience in which education can generate solidarity, and this solidarity eventually would lead to what we call comunio, sharing and communion. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that's the first. No, the document first discusses what it means to humanize education. The second is the document will says if we want to educate the fraternal humanism, we have to promote a culture of dialogue. Okay, so take note that it's a culture of dialogue. Okay, anong ibig sabihin ng culture of dialogue na yan? Okay, so this is central to promoting humanism. Dialogue here does not only mean exchange of views. I say what I want to say, you say what you want to say. Not only that, no? What does it entail? No? It means knowing one another. Okay? In order to mitigate or in order to avoid the alienating effect of the encounter between citizens of different cultures. If there are people meeting and they come from different cultures, that sometimes no, there is some kind of a rejection, there is some kind of alienation or hostility. But if there is true and meaningful dialogue, all these hostilities and all these alienating factors that come into play because of our differences, they are mitigated. That is what we mean by promoting a culture of dialogue according to the document. Also, according to the document, in this culture of dialogue, there is always freedom and equality. When we engage in dialogue, we do not say, oh, I am superior and you are inferior. Superior, I am inferior. No. Okay, in a culture of dialogue, there is freedom and equality, meaning that the participants in this dialogue first must be free from their contingent interests. In other words, when I engage in dialogue, I am not motivated by self-interest. I am not motivated by my own personal agenda. Okay? So, what does it mean? So, free from their contingent interests and must be prepared to recognize the dignity of all parties. In other words, when we engage in dialogue, we come here as brothers and sisters of one Father. Therefore, we are all equal. And we are not motivated by personal interest. Okay? Then, third, what does this culture of dialogue entails? Okay, consistency with one's own specific universal values. You know, when we engage in dialogue and recognize the value of the other person, it doesn't mean that we are going to forget our own values. We have to be consistent with our own specific universal values, and with that, we can pave the way for the general intention. And what happens is we match our words, our actions with our words, or our words with our actions. In other words, in engaging in meaningful dialogue, consistency is very, very important. Here is where, if we are consistent with our words and actions, here is where dialogue of life happens. And dialogue of life is the most meaningful of all dialogues. Okay? Okay, next. Okay, promoting a culture of dialogue. You know, in promoting a culture of dialogue, I would like to present a particular model. Now, there is this study by Leuven University in Belgium. Okay, and in this study, they came up with different models of schools. Okay, based on certain paradigms from Australia. Okay, you know, one of the models of a school that they came up with, you know, or using as a metric is what we call the dialogue school model. Okay, this was studied by these two authors in 2010. What is this dialogue school model? And perhaps we who are in schools could look at this particular model and try to adapt it. Okay, in this model, the school starts from its own Catholic individuality. As I was saying, when we dialogue as Catholic institutions, we do not forget our identity. Our identity as Catholic institutions is still there. In this model, the school starts from its own Catholic individuality and through a dialogue with different life views coming from students coming from different strata or coming from different conditions. Okay, dialogue with different life views. What we want the school in this dialogue, the school model, is to be a guide for the philosophical and religious growth of all students, not only of its Catholic constituents, of all students. As such, the Catholic school identity and solidarity with otherness, okay, I like that word so much, no? Solid are not only perfectly combinable, but they both come to full flourishing when combined.
Ayan po, di ba kumukulo na ako? Ang ganda ng puno na. Sarap ng puno na. Ilagay na natin itong ating public class.
Combined. In other words, while we also accompany all the others that are able to do that, what happens is really that is what we call the dialogue school model. Okay, so there is intense conversation. In dialogue, of course, we cannot avoid no conversation, and this dialogue conversation enriches the other-minded people. Take note that in our schools, if we really would want to promote a culture of dialogue, we really be looking out for like-minded people. Otherwise, no, we simply become sanito. Anyway, more of that later. Enriches the other-minded people at school. Not only the Catholics, no, we enrich them also by what the Catholic faith has to offer them, even though we know that they do not believe this um, Catholic truths. Okay, but because through dialogue they get to know themselves better, become more distinctly aware of their own orientation and choices, learning to take responsibility for them and so deepen their identity. So you would see that very important in this culture of dialogue is respect for the otherness of people within our community. So this pluralization process, pluralization and not pluralism, challenges the Catholic school to be at the service of the personal formation of all young people, okay, regardless of their cultural or religious background. The dialogue school takes its responsibility for all, also on the level of personal development. So napakagandang model nitong dialogue school. And it becomes even more beautiful when we look at it within the context of the other models. Kasi meron din the monologue school model, the colorless school model, and all other models. But I presented this model because it fits very much the promotion of a culture of dialogue. Okay, next po. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay, so promoting a culture of dialogues for education, calls for education that lays the groundwork, okay, or the foundation for peace dialogue, which allows encounter between differences. So when there is dialogue, we encounter differences, but these differences, instead of pulling us apart from one another, it becomes now the fertile ground for building a better world, a better school community, forming up even more our Catholic identity. After all, the word Catholic itself, no, so kaya nga, it's ironical. I mean, it's oxymoron. When we say Katoliko sarado, oxymoron yan. If you are Catholic, you cannot be sarado because Catholic is being all embracing. Okay. But in promoting a dialogue, a culture of dialogue, it means being partial to an educational process. No? There is that educational process we maintain, where there is a search for peaceful and enriching coexistence. Look, the words, it's not simply mutual coexistence that we are talking about here. It's peaceful and enriching coexistence. Kasi minsan, coexistence, I exist, you exist, and we go separate ways. But we, all of us know, we exist. Okay, it's not that. This peaceful, enriching coexistence is rooted in the broader concept of the human person. That this person beside me is not just an individual, but a human person able to forge this peaceful and enriching coexistence. What happens is that we are liberated from any form of egocentrism and ethnocentrism, that my group is better than your group, Catholics are better. No, free of ethnocentrism. And in accordance with the notion of integral and transcendent development, both of the person and society, you see that it's always integral, always includes within its framework what is transcendent. Okay? Both not only of the person but of society. These are really very beautiful concepts, very beautiful that we can incarnate in our own communities, in our own educational setting. Okay, after promoting a culture of dialogue, there is what we call naman the globalizing hope. Natatawa nga ako dito eh. Ang nakalagay doon sa document, globalizing hope is to uh, put hope at the globalized level, something to that effect. No? But I would want to add to more of that. No? It means that, well, globalizing hope, if you notice a while ago, or if you heard it a while ago, I was talking about some of the ill effects of globalization. But the documents always speaks of the positive effects of globalization. Meron din naman siyang positive effects, no? So, globalizing hope means that seeing and supporting the gains or the positive effects of globalization. Ano ba itong mga gains ng globalization? First, globalization, as we can see, has multiplied opportunities for growth and open up new social relations and possibilities. Okay, one of the challenges in our educational institution is that, no, always our office for international relations will always say internationalization dapat talagang gawin natin. One of the benefits of this pandemic is that internationalization now, even of conferences and all that, becomes easy because you don't have to spend so much for the airfare and all that. You can do everything online. That's one of the gains. sacrificing the hope that we have. Okay. Also, there is the globalization of solidarity. And if we look at that, then we will see that there is so much hope in this world, and we build on that hope. Okay, what is this globalization of solidarity? Okay, globalization of hope empowers us, those in the field of Catholic education, to view this equilibrium. In my article in the Antoninus Journal, as I said, the pandemic has thrown us Catholic educational institutions into a state of disequilibrium. But if there is hope, we do not look at this equilibrium some kind of an insurmountable disturbance. We look at this equilibrium, whether internal or external, like we are experiencing now, the external disequilibrium seeping into our schools, causing internal disequilibrium. We look at it as a golden moment to revisit our core, the core of our school's identity, and to seize the moment as an opportunity for renewal. When this pandemic came upon us, all schools, for that matter, big, small, universities, colleges, and all that, came up with their LCP, tawag natin dyan, di ba? Learning Continuity Plan. Okay. But as Catholic educational institutions, our learning continuity plan is not only a tool for survival, it is also our means for vitality, not only viability, but also vitality. And it is a means to reinforce our Catholic identity. Therefore, in our learning continuity plan, our Catholic identity should be there at the core. That is what we mean when we say that globalizing hope, meaning that we see hope in this pandemic in such a way that the disequilibrium that we are experiencing is making us revisit our core, the core of our identity. And when we are able to recognize again that core, that Catholic identity, kung medyo natabunan yan, then it becomes an opportunity for renewal. That is hope. Okay. So, according to the document, we go back to the document because these are parts of my reflection and also reading from people. Okay. A globalization, according to the document, a globalization without vision, without hope, without a message that is both a proclamation and actual life is bound to produce conflict and generate suffering and misery. So, in order to heighten the gains of globalization and somehow mitigate its debilitating effect, especially for the poor and the marginalized, this globalization must be accompanied by a vision that is buoyed up by hope. Because if that is the case, then we are bound to produce conflict and to generate even more sufferings and misery. It becomes a globalization that becomes a tool for further marginalizing those who are already at the periphery of society. That's how beautiful hope is. Okay. I also would like to inject something about hope. Anyway, nasa hope na tayo, no? I came across this very beautiful article. It's actually a proceeding from a conference held in 2018. Okay, a conference in Latin America. The conference is rediscovering the virtue of Christian hope for our troubled world. Okay, and it's very beautiful. That's why I would like to share with you because during this entire conference and even in the crafting of the LCPs and all this and many webinars that I'm attending, it's inevitable that we hear the word resilient. Lagi sinasabi natin, we have to build resilient institutions, we have to make our students resilient, so on and so forth. Now, in this conference, ito medyo tatamaan tayo dito. No? Instead of just, according to the speakers in the conference and the very movers of this conference, instead of just emphasizing resilience and formulating programs that singularly aim at it, salita ko pala to. So, we don't really aim at building resilient students. to singularly aim at resilience. It is incumbent upon us as Catholics, as Christians, to embrace hope as the most vital ingredient in developing resilience. In fact, if we have hope, resilience comes in. We don't even have to develop it. It will come naturally if we have the Christian virtue of hope. It recognizes, according to this particular document, it recognizes that Christian hope is a vital resource in developing resilience. What I'm saying this is within the treasury of our Catholic tradition, we have their gems that we can pull out and we might have forgotten in our struggle because we are so obsessed with resilience. There are treasures there, and one of these treasures is hope. Another treasure is fortitude. Okay? So resilience, more perhaps than other methods, Christian hope is a vital resource in developing resilience. And therefore should be integrated into well-being programs, especially in faith schools, given its current absence. In other words, we might have forgotten that we have a treasury of virtues, of hope, of fortitude that will help us build students who are resilient and hopeful. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what I'm saying and what the conference is saying is that it's not something again that we whip from thin air. Next slide, please. Para hindi pala nakikita ko slide. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, yeah. There are pieces of evidence that would support this. That hope is the most important, is the vital ingredient, the most important resource with building resilience. Okay, there are two studies mentioned. Okay, first in 2016 studies, there's study involving nearly 800 adults from 42 countries. They would like to establish whether any of the 7 personality strengths really promote resilience. And what are these 7 personality strengths? Hope, grit, meaning in life, curiosity, gratitude, controlled beliefs, and use of strengths. 7. Okay. Now, what is the result of the study? The study revealed that only the personality strength of hope emerged as having a significant, statistically significant potential to promote resilience. O, di ba? No? May resibo na tayo. We already have evidence why hope is very important. Another study, earlier study has shown that what drives people, okay, to end their life, or what drives people to be despondent, okay, shown that mortality rate increases in the highest among those who are hopeless. They have already looked into the factor of age and prior health. And even if they consider age and prior health is still the highest cause of mortality, the increase in mortality rate is because of hopelessness. And I would say that this is the battle cry. Okay, ito, original. Ito. Pero pwede nyo namang gamitin, no? The battle cry of hope, unlike resilience. The battle cry of hope is not simply, so good, mga kapatid. When we have hope, it's not only so good, mga kapatid, kundi also luhod, mga kapatid. Ibig sabihin, in our hope, there is an active prayer and worship life. That there are instances in our life when we cannot just be making so good and so good. Hope also tells us, allow moments for luhod. Fall on your knees and pray. Okay? Sugod mga kapatid, luhod mga kapatid. Okay, so that's globalizing hope. The third, okay, component of educating to fraternal humanism is aiming for an authentic inclusion. Okay, now when we are speaking of inclusion here, we have to somehow navigate it in a different way. Okay, inclusion here doesn't mean the inclusion that we are talking about now, although that could also be, no? But according to the document, inclusion involves establishing a relation of solidarity with generations before us. Now, this was what I was talking about, no? The wisdom of the generations before us. Okay. According to the document, inclusion entails surmounting the degrees of kinship. In other words, hindi lang relatives, my kids, but all, everyone is recognized as being children of the Father, and thus we have a relationship of universal solidarity. That I look at you as my sister and my brother, not because we are related by blood, but because we are related, our faith tells us that we have one Father. That is inclusion. No one is left behind because the sun shines on everyone and God loves all his children. Now, Benedict, as I was saying a while ago, there is a very beautiful term used by Pope Emeritus Benedict to talk about this inclusion of recognizing, establishing a relationship of solidarity with the generations that come before us. He is calling this a hermeneutic of continuity. A hermeneutic of continuity. We do not break away from the wisdom of the past as a church. But what we do is we renew it. No? So there is that hermeneutic of continuity. He would emphasize that. And its critical role, this hermeneutic of continuity and this relationship of solidarity with generations that came before us, is very critical in confirming the unity of the church in time and space and the coherence of its doctrinal formulation. So there is coherence, there is consistency, because we do recognize that there is continuity. Okay? And this is what the document would mean by true inclusion. Okay, now, that's the third. The fourth, wait, na tayo you know, the document is one read, no city. But if you want to really understand it and plumb its wisdom, you have to read it again because really it's so profound and full of wisdom. The next is educating to fraternal humanism involves, next slide please. Ayan, okay. Educating to fraternal humanism involves cooperating, building networks, or coming up with cooperation networks. You know, this is very fairly easy to understand. We cannot have an educational community, a really vibrant educational community, if there is no cooperation among the people in our community. Okay? So education to fraternal humanism develops cooperation networks in the various fields of education, especially within the academic education. And how does this transpire? What are collaborating with educators, no, in an approach, no, by preparing joint efforts in preparing formation programs. In other words, no one is left behind. Everything has something good to say, no, in building this network of cooperation. It's not simply, Father Elmer, for the past 2 days, I have heard him use the word synodality. Okay. During the launching of Perspectives, he used the word synodality. Okay. In his opening speech, when he was elected, he was saying that the direction that he's taking is one of synodality. We are joking as a PCSS when we are crafting the roof bricks. Ano ba ang mas mataas? Ano ba ang level 4 at level 3? Collegiality o synodality? No, that is something that we can discuss when we go to the PCSS TWG. Okay, so this cooperation network talks about synodality, collegiality, both listening and engaging in conversation, because there will be no synodality or collegiality first if there is no listening. And it's really the listening that is connected to the heart. Sabi nga ni Mean, let us listen with the ears of our heart. Diba, Mean? No? So it's listening. And at the same time, after listening, it's reflecting. And after reflecting, it is talking. In building cooperation networks, reflecting before talking is very important. Otherwise, if we just talk without reflection, we become charlatans. Yung mga charlatans na yakking without any sense. So that's very important in cooperation networks, collaboration. then students also cooperate among themselves in undertaking worthwhile projects that benefit not only them but the larger community. And this is the purpose of cooperation networks in our schools. Okay? Okay, so again, when we speak of cooperation networks, we do not sweep pluralism under a rug and simply ignore it. We try to establish solidarity despite the fact that there is a plurality of ideas and orientations. And this network is not only in the field of research, more importantly, it is in the field of service. Again, this is one of the laments that we express in our schools. We put a premium on research. Ang laki ng pondo para sa research. Kaya pag gumawa ka ng graph, kitang-kita mo yung pie sa research. Pero pag tignan mo yung pondo sa service, parang ano lang, isang guhit, no? In other words, uh, kung sa kilogram, isang guhit lang. No? So, this is a network not only for research, but especially for service, especially for us Catholic schools. Okay? When we help each other and share new discoveries. Okay. Next slide, please. Ako, hindi ko pala nasasabi next slide. Okay, next slide pa. Yan. Okay. So, cooperation networks. Okay. Now, as I was telling you, I'm gonna talk about homogenization, which is part of fraternal educating to fraternal humanism. According to education in fraternal humanism, there is a widespread call for education to overcome the pitfalls of cultural standardization processes, which produce the harmful effects of homogenization and at the same time consumer manipulation. Hirap intindihin, ano? Ano ibig sabihin nito? What does this mean? Okay, syempre medyo nag-research naman ako. So, what does this mean? Homogenization happens or results when the ultimate goal of education, ito, kita mo yung goal of education is skewed. Okay? When the ultimate goal of education is to build competitive advantages in individuals, in students. In other words, we want to produce students with competitive edge. Okay, advantages. Since the basic resource for society is knowledge applied in the labor field and its value is measured on the basis of productivity. You remember what we are saying about managerialist education? In order to ensure that we produce products that will suit the market, there should be homogenization. Okay? In order to face up to this reality, as I was saying, educational processes, which involves curriculum, evaluations, or assessments, and other things, should be homogenized in favor of financial capital. Kasi may measure ng competencies dyan, tinitingnan, ito, pwede na to ma-employ, pwede na to ma-employ. And sadly, what happens to us? That's what happens to us, no? And we should have alternatives. Because content is prioritized, homogenization ignores contextual and cultural differences. In other words, what we give to those in the city, we also give to those in the rural areas. So we ignore context and cultural differences because our concern is simply content. Okay? And what we ignore also is the critical nature of education and the strengthening of attitudes. Why do we ignore attitudes? Because in homogenization, attitudes like solidarity, love of neighbor, empathy, and collective commitment are simply not measurable. So therefore, even if they are part of integral formation of the human being, they are not included in homogenization. Simply because they cannot be measured. Okay? So that's how sad homogenization is. That's why the document is, saying that we should be wary about homogenization. Okay, now, okay, it's 11 o'clock. I am summarizing. Okay, for us to be able to understand, I made, next slide please. Next pa. Table. Yun. Okay, this is a table. Okay, and in this table, we could see, in educate, I sort of summarized everything I said, no, in some crisp sentences. Okay, in education to fraternalism, to fraternal humanism, we have to give way to and shy away from. Okay, so first, we have to give way to a Catholic vision of the world rather than a consumer, economic, or technocratic one. We have to give way to a Catholic vision of the world and the formation of mature people, like what Francis said. Okay, that's we place a premium on that. And what should we be shy away from? We should shy away from a managerialist and market-driven orientation that promotes education as a consumable good rather than a key instrument in protecting people's rights. Okay, kita natin, ha? Give way to, shy away from. Next, okay. We should give way to research. Not research that would catapult us to the stratosphere of prominence, but research that would articulate the university's commitment to both scholarship and mission of service to society. According to CONG.R.E.S.S, we do research uncomfortable truths, of truths that may not sit well with the powers that be. But that is our mission as Catholic institution. Okay, now, what should we shy away from? Limiting the promotion of Catholic identity within the terrain of theology courses and liturgical celebration. Talk about permeation. Okay? Next. Give way to. We give way to putting the person at the center of education, but not simply the individual, huh? This person within a framework of relationship that makes up a living community. And what should we shy away from? An education that puts a premium on and is fixated with just content assimilation. Yung content assimilation yan, kaya nga di ba, you notice, pag may graduation, ano nangyayari after graduation? Tatapon, di ba, yung kanilang mga, cap. Ibig sabihin daw niyan, that's a symbol of, yeah, lahat ng napag-aralan ko nandito sa mind ko, tapon ko na, because it's simply content assimilation. And that is, we should shy away from that. Okay? Give way to an education that strikes a balance between self-improvement and the common good. In other words, the concern of our education, we target really the self-improvement of our learners, of our teachers. But for what purpose? Not only for them to be able to navigate life afterwards, but also to contribute to the common good. We shy away from education that encourages egocentrism and ethnocentrism. Okay? 5. Give way to education that promotes a culture of dialogue anchored on freedom and equity. And shy away from education that frames its philosophy on rigid standardization and homogenization to meet market standards. You know, in our life, we cannot, sadly, ito din isang lament natin sa CEAP, di ba? Yung sobrang control even for Catholic schools. Okay? To the point that there really is homogenization. Okay? But I would say that we should shy away from rigid homogenization and standardization and assert our uniqueness as Catholic educational institutions, because there are certain non-negotiables when we talk about our Catholic identity. And this cannot be offered at the altar of homogenization and standardization. Okay? Next slide, please. Okay, education. Okay, so give way to education that harmoniously combines Catholic school identity and solidarity with otherness. Okay, we recognize the otherness of people within this atmosphere of vibrant Catholic identity. Okay, sabi ko nga, it's not sweeping it under the rug of ignominy, and just ignore, meron pala kaming Catholic identity. And what should we shy away from? Education that scoffs at the importance of solidarity with the non-Catholic external world. We cannot scoff at that. We are Catholic, okay? Since it is considered a threat to our Catholic specificity, shy away from that. Thus creating what we call a wall Catholic ghetto. In this time and age, no, a ghetto is a no-no. Okay, we cannot adopt this ghetto mentality even when it comes to our faith. Okay, give way to programs founded on Christian hope, as a vital resource in developing resilience more than any other methods. In fact, very strong words nga from the organizers to commodify and romanticize resilience. And I have been reading articles about romanticizing resilience. So instead of romanticizing that, we build on Christian hope. Okay? Education and shy away from education that considers disequilibrium as an insurmountable threat to vitality rather than as an opportunity for growth and renewal. Okay, and next slide, please. Okay, these three slides are already my references. So when we post this, medyo may editing lang po akong gagawin, but I will post this together with these three sides of references so that you can also make use of the references that I used. Okay, so shy away from and give way to. That is Fraternal Educating to Fraternal Humanism version Pilar Romero. Thank you.